Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. This is a special quarterly update episode. We're going to look in the mailbag and read a few of the letters from the listeners. I would love to hear your questions and just your response to the show. All you need to do is look in the episode description or the show notes, and there should be a link that says text a message to the show. Make sure you include your name if you would like to be identified, and those messages will receive priority when I do episodes like this. Our special guest host today is Captain Stephen Smith. You'll remember him from episode 40 when we talked about laterals moving from one department to another. Steve has been in patrol and he was a detective for years. He's been a captain over both, and I work with him on a regular basis. Steve and I are going to read the mail, but we're also going to talk about episode 106, which was the episode where we had our British police officer, Ken Anderson, who was ready to take his own life by throwing himself off a cliff. Here's Stephen Smith. Steve, how are you today?
I'm well, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you're able to help me out. I'm doing mailbag episode, going to look at a couple things people wrote in about the show. The first one is actually a review from Apple Podcasts. You have that right there in front of you. Can you read that for me?
As a chaplain for the fire department and full-time pastor, I can't thank Hey Chaplain podcast enough for your helpful insight and encouragement. Blessings.
So, a fire chaplain. This show is for police officers, but it's funny, right now, firefighter culture is maybe a little more tuned in to wellness stuff than police culture might be. I don't know. Do you sense that at all?
Oh, absolutely. First of all, when you look at a lot of firefighters at their shirts, whereas mine, it has my last name and my first initials, a lot of firefighters have their first names on their shirts.
Yeah.
So it presents a little differently. They dress differently. And certainly within the firefighter culture, they sleep in the same bunkhouse. They eat meals together.
Yeah, they come back around that same table.
Absolutely.
You know?
And they have assignments within the shift. The rookies get more of the scud jobs, and they kind of work their way up. So it is a little tighter environment, whereas law enforcement, yeah, we come in and we're at the station house. We have roll call. Sometimes somebody will bring in food or something, but really once roll call is over, the sergeant does everything and sends us on our way. Everybody kind of goes in different directions. You might get a couple of guys that you hang out with and have lunch with every once in a while.
You might be in a two-man car.
You might.
Maybe.
You might.
But that doesn't happen as much anymore.
Not anymore,
Yeah.
Just because of manpower shortages where you need a maximum amount of officers out there. But yeah, they definitely have a kind of different culture than they do, but we're also in the same universe.
Yeah.
On the emergency calls, certainly structure fires, certainly some of the medical calls, dead body calls, the firefighters are there too. We just had a recent pretty heavy crime scene not too long ago, just about a week and a half ago, and they're there too. I mean, they're seeing the same stuff we have. They're just experiencing it a little bit differently. So yeah, I would certainly agree that their culture is a little bit tighter than ours.
Well, and I'm thankful for everybody that listens. And if they're firefighters and firefighter adjacent people like fire chaplains that are listening to the show and getting something from it, then I'm real excited for that. I'm happy for them. I'm just not typically directing things at fire. And so it's funny to me how frequently I get feedback from people that are in the fire world.
Well, and we usually share stories too. I mean, I run into a firefighter. I mean, living here in Kansas City, Kansas, and growing up in Kansas City, Kansas, I know some firefighters that I've known for a long time, and a lot of times we'll swap stories, and it can be pretty funny. I mean, you always get the funny stuff.
Their perspective on you, or
somewhat, yeah. Oh yeah. We complain back and forth about certain things. They sometimes feel that we push things off on them, which I sometimes we do, because you get somebody that's in a crisis where like they need to go to the hospital, and whereas they get kind of tired of that, and they some of the things we call them for, we get somebody that we arrest and they're like, my finger hurts, I need an ambulance, and we have to call one. Some of that's just based upon policies and some bad things that have happened in the past that we're paying for now, but they don't appreciate that sometimes. But it's for the most part, it's a very friendly rivalry.
All right. The next one, this is actually somebody who wrote in through the link on the podcast, episode notes, and they followed that link and sent this text.
Hey, Chaplain, just a quick text of encouragement. I'm a police chaplain in Americus, Georgia. I've shared your podcast with the other chaplains and many of the officers. While I have experience as an Army chaplain, hospital chaplain, and hospice chaplain, I'm always looking to learn new things. We're a smaller department, but we recently busy with Carter's death. Thank you for what you were doing. I assume he's referring to President Carter.
Yeah.
Which, for a small agency, I used to work for a smaller agency, Liberty, Missouri, which is just in the Northeast. Jesse James robbed his first bank there. So I had a small town mentality there. But, still big things happen. For a small town, when something big happens, it puts an enormous amount of pressure on, just a small group of individuals.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about how in that small situation, you have to wear a lot of different hats.
Well, and work a lot of hours because there's only a limited amount of people. You might have the sheriff's department or the highway patrol that can help, but you're still talking about a limited amount of people. And you have some counties in the United States that only have maybe 4 or 5 deputies. You got a sheriff and a handful of deputies in a small town. You've got guys that are trying to do the best they can, but all of a sudden you're looking at 12, 24-hour shifts, maybe. You've got Secret Service
something like
in.
that, where a president who lives locally dies. That doesn't happen every day, and the whole world is looking at you there for some brief, for a few days. I mean, you're kind of in the spotlight.
Oh, absolutely. And you look at the Trump assassination attempt. I mean, there was a lot of scrutiny placed, on that small town as well. You have the Secret Service there, and you have a lot of people that are trying to cover their reputations.
Yes.
Let me put it that way. So it's important that you take those jobs seriously. But yeah, small towns, you get a deputy chief in a small town. He's doing a lot. He's covering payroll. He's covering all of the shifts and trying to make sure that everything is taken care of to the point where he's probably working a few shifts in there too. So it's a big deal. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah.
There's pros and cons between small departments and large departments. It's not always the grass being greener on the other side of the fence.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a different shade of green.
Okay. What's the third one there? This is another one where someone wrote in through the episode notes and used the little fan mail function. And what did they write?
Longtime listener, first-time caller. Love the episodes with Ken Anderson, especially when he said we have to reach in to people who need help, not just expect them to reach out if you need anything. I felt that was powerful. I'm a full-time paramedic and peer support team leader at my agency. I listen regularly and appreciate your ministry on Hey Chaplain. So much is applicable to first responders in general. It is very helpful for me in my roles, but also personally in my walk with God. Thanks for what you do. Nathan.
So he's referencing Ken Anderson. Ken Anderson was the British police officer who was going to throw himself off a cliff, and a stranger interrupted his suicide attempt. I believe that's episode 106 and 106.5. It's a 2-parter. You just listened to that episode. What are your thoughts?
A couple of things resonated with me on that. One thing that Ken talked about is that as he's about to jump off of the cliff, he had mentioned his self-hatred. I mean, he loved his family, but his self-hatred at that moment outweighed any love for his family.
Yeah.
And I've heard of this kind of thing before, but in law enforcement, we are mostly geared towards thinking that people who commit suicide are selfish or weak or cowardly.
Sure.
But the way he explained it, he believed that the most significant thing he could do.
The most loving thing.
The most loving thing, exactly. He used that term. The loving thing that he could do at that point is to end his existence on this mortal plane. Yeah. That somehow that's going to make everybody else's life a little bit easier, or just absolutely deliver them from this misery that he was.
Okay, let's expound on that a little bit, because you were telling me before we started recording about something that your daughter said to you.
She was a teenager, so it was very insightful, but she's a pretty bright, insightful, funny girl. She's right now pregnant with twins.
Oh,
so,
hey.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a trip. But we were talking about suicide a long time ago. It wasn't that she was in crisis. It was just a conversation that came up. And what she said at the time is that for the person that is contemplating suicide, their life is the thing. That is the bad thing. There is always a heroic side of self-sacrifice, especially in the military world and then in the police world as well. I mean, a lot of Medal of Honor winners won it posthumously. And the best
They
example,
literally
I can think
jumped on a grenade.
exactly. You
yes.
get the guy that jumped on a grenade and saved his squad mates, that sacrificed himself for his unit, for the people he loved. Well, it says in the Bible, no greater love has any man than a man that lays down his life for his friends. And that's something that is a constant through both military and police service. So those are people we admire. But to the person who's undergoing a severe mental health crisis, is dealing with the self-hatred, the way they look at it is their life is the grenade that just got dropped into the trench. And the only way that they can save their loved ones, their friends, their family, is to jump on the grenade and just end it. And then everybody's going to be better. And maybe they feel like they're
doing them a favor.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. By eliminating myself from the gene pool, I'm making everybody else's life better. But in every case I've ever seen, it almost never ends up that way. I mean,
it's almost always worse.
Well, it tears families apart.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guilt. There's a lot of, introspection there, that what could I have done differently? Yeah. And
a lot of people feeling like they share blame for what happened.
And I think taking that approach kind of made me feel a little bit more compassionate. I mean, I just here recently had to deal with a couple of suicides. And at the time, in any suicide I've ever had or ever been to, I mean, you're kind of overcome by how empty and sad it seems.
And it's so devastating to everybody around them.
It is. And I wish people for that are feeling that way could just kind of look into the future, and just see what it does to other people.
It's not making their family feel better.
No, it really doesn't at all. In fact, it's going to remove a lot of joy that they might have experienced. Yeah, friends you have that are lonely and might be suffering. Like I said, reach in to them a little bit and let them know that that life will not be better without them. Yeah. That there's no scenario where life is going to be better without you.
I think you do that best by expressing how much you value them. Mm-hmm. You maybe wouldn't use that word, but you would convey to them that, hey, my life is better because I got to see you today. Yeah. And that sentiment could save a life. And so please convey that anytime you can.
So, I mean, I had one recently. It's a 15-year-old boy, and somebody at the scene said, what could be so bad at 15 years old? Yeah. And that's hard to explain. And that's where I think the next topic kind of transitioning in there is we expect people that are hurting to tell us, to reach out to us, to let us know, hey, I'm hurting. Hey, I'm suffering.
We say that all the time to them. We're like, hey, if you need anything, reach out to me.
I'm sure it's genuine when it comes out of your mouth, but are you really willing to put in the time to help these people out? And so what he said is that, that people need to reach in, that we need to, the people that are the friends of our, our brothers and sisters that are suffering, that maybe we need to do a little bit more work on that we need to be the one to actually approach this person and say, man, I can tell you're having a hard time. Do you want to talk about it? And be consistent with that, not just the one-off, hey, I offered, I offered the help. Certainly you can do it in a way that is both compassionate and gives them their privacy.
I try to find that balance, and I struggle with this. And so my go-to method is to send a text, because a text does not need to be responded to immediately. I'm not calling them and interrupting something or intruding. But it's also kind of impersonal, and I struggle with it. And so I wrote a text today to an officer, hey, just checking in on you, just the chaplain checking on you, whatever. And I don't know if that's enough, but I am trusting, kind of like what you were saying, that we are reaching in. I am going to keep reaching in. What's your take on that? Do you feel like there's a better way to approach somebody?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be individualistic. But those texts, I think you're onto something there, because I've gotten a few of those where, hey, just checking in on you. I mean, to me, that's almost more thoughtful than anything else. I mean, I'm not a big phone talker.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Well, I mean, the job has done some damage to my ears, and I mean, just technology and stuff, and phones aren't as crisp as they used to be, despite what we want to say. A good landline connection was usually pretty solid, whereas you're dropping about every other word in a conversation. So I think a text, just, hey, just checking on you, making sure you're okay. Yeah. And then the onus is upon me, to when I respond, how I respond. Or, sometimes you send those kinds of texts and they don't respond, or they just respond with thank you.
Yeah.
But
and that's
lets people
okay.
know.
I send out a lot of those, and I'm each one of them. I'm very invested emotionally, but I also know they may or may not respond because they might be sleeping.
Sure.
But it's shift work. I don't know what their hours are all the time.
Well, and I started doing that with officers that would get involved, like in officer-involved shootings or critical incidents. And even if I didn't know them, I was a detective, I'm a cop, I can track you down pretty easily. But just going through Facebook or different things, or asking somebody, hey, and I would say, hey, this is Captain Smith. Hope you're doing okay. Most of the time I would get a response, yes, sir, I'm fine. And that was it. I mean, I didn't push it from there. Just let them know, hey, there are other resources available and that sort of thing. But just kind of putting myself out there to them, even though they don't know who I am. I'm not just some old man that wanders the hallways, that knows a lot of stuff and has seen a lot of things. But, I'm having been in some rough situations or going through some trauma, and not just trauma out on the streets involving the dead bodies and danger of the bullets. I mean, there's a certain amount of administrative trauma that you go through just by doing the job, just at the very nature of the job.
Yeah.
So, reaching out to people and saying, hey, man, I know you're going through a rough time. Just checking on you.
Yeah.
Hope you're doing okay.
It's not just they saw a dead body, they were traumatized in some visceral way like that. There's administrative trauma, like you said. You don't have to be a cop very long before you brush up against IA. Mm-hmm. And most of those turn out fine. But man, that's stressful to think, okay, now I'm being investigated and I'm going through all this kind of stuff. And that's, I think, worth checking on people in those situations.
Oh, sure. And let's say like an officer-involved shooting or something where you go on administrative leave, and finally the media's kind of caught on board with that, because it used to be officer-involved shooting, officer placed on leave, like there was something wrong. Well, now we know that's normal. That's part of it. Yeah. But I think law enforcement agencies are doing a much better job than they used to in handling those kinds of things. They would take the officer's gun and badge and basically almost strip you naked.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes quite literally, because they're taking pictures of your uniform and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys felt like they were being treated like a criminal.
Yeah.
And so I think we're doing a much, much better job in how we've handled those kinds of things. They are having the debriefings and making them mandatory, which some guys didn't like that at first, but I went through some early in my career, like 30 years ago, that were awful, that made me decide I will never, ever go to one again. But they've definitely changed the tone in how they deal with trauma. It has changed, and bringing professionals in that are definitely geared towards, the officer wellness side of it, rather than just, the investigation side.
Yeah.
Expecting.
I feel like the last several debriefs I've been in have all been really productive. Yes. Actually,
they've definitely gotten better, and it needs to be an environment where they feel free to talk. Mm-hmm. When we lost a couple of our officers, I mean, it was super, super traumatizing, and to sit around and talk to other officers, your peers, and find out that they're feeling pretty much the same things you are. That it was kind of it was definitely therapeutic to hear that these guys are feeling the same stuff I am.
Now, earlier before we started recording, you brought up a point that I thought was really insightful about the attitude of negative things, trauma and being in trouble and all that kind of stuff being contagious. Mm-hmm. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. You get somebody that has been in trouble or has some bad things happen, is maybe going through some mental health issues. I mean, we've had some officers that have lost children. I mean, you lose relatives, you lose spouses, just normal loss, but, where they're really going through a rough time. And also some of the administrative trauma, where a guy is just having a rough time. He's in some trouble. They're trying to sort through it. But a lot of times, a lot of your peers will kind of treat you like you got a disease.
Yeah.
That you've got some sort of contagious disease that could easily rub off onto someone. And you have situations where it's hard to make eye contact. A lot of those phone calls stop coming, and
people stop checking on you.
Well, it's a very lonely time. And Ken and his, that podcast where he was out for like 2 years because he had a mixture of injury, as well as some of the mental issues that he was going through, and these people just kind of...
And it happened right during COVID.
Yeah, well...
And so he was like every angle. He was being isolated.
Yes, and now I can certainly vouch for the fact that COVID was a very lonely time. I mean, within my own family, I had my father was fighting cancer. My son-in-law was fighting cancer. So they were both immunocompromised, so I really couldn't be around them, which means I couldn't be around my mom or my daughter. My son and his girlfriend were going to Pitt State, and they both contracted COVID down there. So I was by myself. I mean, luckily I had one of my best friends, another police officer that lived next door, but it was he and I watching TV, and it was a very, very lonely time. So if you have somebody who's going through some pain issues, which obviously he was, because I think he had a broken back, and also the mental health issues that he's going through. It can be a very lonely time. So that's where it becomes important to reach in. So I think people kind of get stuck on their own little bubble. And if you don't feel like going out and doing things. I mean, it used to be, we had what we used to call choir practices, where the guys, the shifts would meet together, and we really solved a lot of the world's problems in those choir practice.
Right.
But that doesn't happen as much anymore. So,
well, our whole society is becoming more isolated. I like to talk about you can see it in the architecture of our homes. Homes used to be built with front porches with porch swings. Now they're built with privacy fences in the backyard.
Sure.
And so we are more isolated than ever. So we have society trending in a negative direction in that way. But that doesn't mean we have to go that way ourselves. I mean, we can deliberately, I'm going to reach in. I'm going to check on people. I'm going to see how they're doing. If I have to set a reminder on my phone to do it, if that's how bad I am, that I can't think of it on my own, then I'm going to set an alarm, and then I'm going to check on that person here in 2 or 3 days. And I'm not going to let 6 weeks slip by of them feeling like they're absolutely by themselves, because that's the way Ken Anderson was. He got isolated and actually had his department, they said, like, oh, give him some space, which is not always bad advice, but he ended up going almost 2 years thinking that everybody had basically forgotten about him.
Well, cops are rule followers. So if my sergeant tells me, hey, man, or in my case, I'm a captain now. So if somebody, my major, the deputy chief, somebody says, hey, just give him some space, I'm probably going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do exactly what they tell me to do, because, I don't want to get in trouble. So, I could certainly see that. I mean, and it sounds like at the beginning, they were trying to do the right thing and, hey, man, just checking. Then he went back. The sergeant, I guess, went back and told all the guys on his shift, hey, Ken's having a rough time. Let's, you give him some space. And so.
And they did for 2 years.
And they did for a long time, I'm afraid.
I want to thank Steve for coming in and helping me. And I really want to thank those people who have been supporting the show through Buy Me a Coffee. That's been my primary way. If someone wanted to contribute to the work that I'm doing, help defray some of the cost associated with running a podcast and doing the web hosting and all that kind of thing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Some of you have really been generous recently, and I'm just overwhelmed. Your generosity has meant the world to me. And so thank you so much for your support and for your help. The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests, and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain. And as always, pray for peace in our city.